Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us in this edition of Viewpoint. Today we continue talking issues relating to Cameroon, and we're talking about politics globally. And in today's edition of the program, we want to find out the relationship between a Christian and politicking. That is, trying to find out if a politician can actually, or a Christian can actually participate in partisan politics. To talk to us, we have two guests. All of them, they are live from Germany. They would be talking to us, trying to explain if Christians can participate in partisan politics. We have Father Constance Leke. He is a Cameroonian and is out there in charge of the Cameroon community in Germany. Good evening, Father, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Good evening, Venantius, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Father. The pleasure is ours having you on board Viewpoint. Father is being accompanied by George Chubonga Chrysostom. George is equally in Germany. Good evening, George. Thank you for being there for us.
Thank you, Mr. Venantius. It's always a pleasure to communicate with you and share our experiences.
It is a pleasure as well. We are talking about Christians and politics. So we want to find out if they are, they can go. So let's go to part one of the program to take the yes and no question and answer session. This is part one of the program, and we begin with question one. Father, I begin with you. Can a lay Christian involve in partisan politics?
Yes, of course.
Father says, yes, a lay Christian can involve in partisan politics. George, I am with you. Can a lay Christian involve in partisan politics?
Absolutely. Yes. Very correct.
George says, absolutely, very correct. We take question two. George, I remain with you. Is politicking generally for the good of the masses, George?
Well, it should be for the common good.
George says it should be, which means yes, it should. Father, I go with you. Is politicking generally for the good of the masses?
Of course, it is good for the masses.
Father says, yes, it is good. Those were the points. Let us take part two of the program to hear them talk to us. If you are just joining us, you are watching Viewpoint live here on DBS television, and we're equally going live on our Facebook page. Politics has always been described by many political analysts and observers as a dirty game. Dirty, perhaps, because politicians who are involved in this art of management, because they present perhaps a negative image of their activity, and that is why the society look up to them as those who are not, call it, sincere with their activities. In tonight's edition of the program, we are asking the question, can a lay Christian participate in partisan politics? And Father Constant says yes, they can. Father, can we hear you out?
Christian can and should participate in partisan politics in 5 different perspectives, because politics is the art of governing people. It is the art of bringing order in society, and these are the ways by which a Christian can get involved in politics. One Christian, the laity is supposed to belong to a political party, and it is in that party that he is going to be able to make his voice. He is going to be able to influence the decisions, the policies that will affect the masses. And also, secondly, he's supposed to vote. He's supposed to involve himself in partisan politics by actually taking part in elections, in voting. And through these elections and voting, he's going to be able to decide the person who is going to administer and is going to be able to change, you see, decisions on the ground in the government. Thirdly, the lay Christian is supposed to participate in partisan policy by occupying certain positions. He or she can be elected into posts like opposition, parliamentarian, minister, even president. And so through his governing, through occupying this post of responsibility, he or she is going to do a lot of good for the masses. Fourthly, the lay Christian is supposed to, the Bible tells us that the Christian is supposed to pray for the authorities, government authorities, those who are ruling. And so praying is a form of participating in politics. By praying for political leaders, you're also participating and therefore doing good to the country or to the nation or to the state. And fifthly, the lay Christian is supposed to participate in partisan politics by obeying, by submitting to authorities. When you obey the law has been put in place to govern, to bring order in society and for the good of the masses. So when the lay Christian also is law-abiding, that Christian is in partisan politics. So these are the five main reasons or areas where the lay Christian is supposed to participate in partisan politics. We see it even in the Bible, where the people of God were so much involved in the state affairs. We see God's people who were kings, like Saul, like King David, like King Solomon. We see Joseph, who was a prime minister in Egypt, even though Egypt was not a nation that feared God. But Joseph, who feared God, who belonged to God's people, was a prime minister. And through him, he was able to influence the life of the politics of Egypt. We see Daniel, we see the prophets, we see Queen Esther. We see all of these are God's people who were involved in politics and did a lot of good to influence the political life of the state of the nation of Israel. So from all perspectives, we see that the lay Christian must be active in politics. If you go to the New Testament, you see even the Christian letters calling Christians and believers to be involved in the management of the state. We see in Acts of the Apostle where the Christians brought things together in order to be redistributed. That is social politics or social Christianity in a state. And since politics affects all areas of life, like education, economics, administration, healthcare, the Christian is supposed to be involved in all of these things. If not, if they are not involved, then unbelievers and the bad people will become politicians and will be able to bring out evil decisions that will affect the masses negatively. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Father, for your exposition. And we would understand that a Christian should belong to a political party, should elect, should respect authorities, should obey the authorities, and should contribute to the running of the administration of his country.
Exactly.
George, I come back to you. Yeah. George, when we talk about politics, that is what Father says. That's what they should do. But we understand that when they tell us, they say, politicians, you must dirty your hands in order to move up to that position. That is why we hear of, vote rigging. That's why we hear of fraud during elections. Are these not realities that Christians go through? Are these not Christians who are involved in this vote rigging, election fraud, malpractices, and all this, George? And you think that lay Christians can participate in partisan politics?
Mr. Venantius, what you have just mentioned is true. It's a reality. we find Christians doing the opposite of what they should do. In fact, the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith issued a document on November 21st, 2002 on the participation of Catholics in politics. You know, these documents are issued by the Vatican to direct us towards the right way, but many Christians don't read the document. Now, if you go to that document, Mr. Venatius, that document outlines some principles that every Christian in politics should follow. These principles have not been followed. That's why you still keep seeing all the things you just mentioned. First of all, this document begins by saying that the commitment of Christians in politics is primordial. It's of utmost importance because it plays the highest role of any citizen in a country. Every citizen in a country is supposed to play a role. And politics is one of the doors, it's the key to playing a role in a country. So this document encourages every citizen to play a role in politics. Now let's go to the next question. How is that role? How are they supposed to play this role? How are they supposed to play? You know, the document outlines some principles that are supposed to be followed. For example, they don't have to relinquish participation in public life. They should do it because of the contribution they have for the common good, public order, peace, freedom, equality, respect for human life, justice, solidarity, common good, coherence between the faith and the life. That's a very important point. There must be coherence between the politics that is being practiced with the faith of the Christian. You know, nowadays people try to separate politics from their Christian life, and that's where the problem comes. This document encourages and stipulates that a Christian his life should be coherent with politics and with the gospel message. You see, he's supposed to fulfill his duties faithfully in the spirit of the gospel. Now, when a Christian tries to separate politics from the gospel, from the good news of Jesus Christ, there becomes a problem. There is corruption, there is rigging, as you just mentioned. And I'd like to conclude by mentioning Father mentioned, Father is a biblical scholar. He has mentioned some scholars in the Bible, some strategic figures in the Bible who, despite their religious views, they participated in politics and did not dirty their hands. Now, I would like to be very, very practical. I want to give an example of Thomas More. You know, Thomas More is the patron saint of statesmen and politicians. You see, though subjected to psychological pressure, he did not soil his conscience. He did not soil his conscience. You know, he was a very, very important figure, a politician in Britain. He refused to take an oath of supremacy and was executed and convicted to treason. He was even beheaded for refusing to accept King Henry as the supreme head of the Church of England. And he also refused the annulment of his marriage with Catherine Aragon. So you see that Thomas More, though he was in politics, he didn't give heed. He followed the principles as outlined by the gospel. You cannot divorce. You cannot take an oath of supremacy to a person. He said, no, we cannot. He refused to accept the King Henry as the supreme head of the Church of England. So you see, Thomas More is an example for us, a very great example, because he refused to compromise. He never refused to compromise. He did not forsake, never forsaking the constant fidelity to legitimate authority and institution, which distinguished him. So you see, he taught us that man cannot be separated from God, nor politics from morality. You can't separate politics from morality. They should go together. And let's not go far to Thomas More. Let's go to Africa. We have Julius Nyerere, who was president of Tanzania. He distinguished his life as a president in politics. So it's possible to be a politician and coherent to the gospel values. And let's conclude with Bernard Sokika Fonlong, whom we know very well. He was a politician in Cameroon, Minister of Communication, and he worked with President Ayijo. He distinguished himself as a Christian, authentic and genuine Christian in politics, despite the fact that he was a Christian. So it's possible. It's very, very possible to involve in politics, but at the same time without going against the principles of our faith and of the gospel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, George. Father, I come back to you before we take question 2. And I was asking this question. When you look at those who are involved, most of them are Christians. What went wrong?
Yes, in Christian nations like America, like most Canada, most European countries, they are mostly Christians involved in politics. And we have even Christian parties in Germany and all over. In Africa, we have both Christians and Muslims involved in politics. And we see that there are some who are doing their best to be able to preserve their Christian faith, morals, in spite of being politicians. We have others who are lay Christians involved in politics, but who have soiled their hands. But we cannot look only at the negative aspect of the failings or the weaknesses of these Christian politicians. Everything human has weaknesses. Human beings will always have weaknesses. They will not be perfect. So lay Christians could be in politics, and at times they may go against the Christian value or gospel message. It is due to the fallen nature of man. It is due to sin and temptation. Temptation come and they are not able to resist, and they give in to temptation and practice other and carry out malpractices like rigging elections, like corruption, like being involved in secret societies in order to ascend posts of responsibility, bribery, and so on. Those are, we say, human weaknesses. You see, where people, Christians, who are called to holiness, who are called to moral probity, fall short of the glory of the gospel message. So in that case, I would say that is the abuse of politics. So we cannot take the abuse of something for the use of something. So we will look at that, but we'll say, okay, they are fallen. But we look at those trying their best in order to live the Christian message, even as politicians. There are so many examples we can copy, like George has given. The president of Julius Nyerere, the recent president of Tanzania, who just died, and Goodluck Jonathan of Nigeria, Trump of America, and we can go on and on citing those who have even ascended to the highest positions in politics, not to talk of the so many ministers, so many mayors all over, so many parliamentarians who are genuine Christians, who don't soil their hands in evil, and they remain faithful Christians. So many Christians who occupy high offices like lawyers, like magistrates, like general managers, like you see, educationists, journalists, and teachers. You see, all of these people, they try their best in spite of the failings of others. So I will not think that those who are failing are the majority. They are just the bad minority. But a great majority of Christians involved in politics are doing their best humanly possible to maintain and to follow the Christian morals and values. For all Christians are called to holiness. It is when we try to separate politics and give politics a bad name. Some people think that politics is defiled. No, politics is not defiled. God and morals and holiness is also involved in politics. It is just the way we may look at it. It does not follow the imperfect path of those who are involved when they fall. But we should try to uphold the morals, the standards of genuine politics. Thank you.
So much, Father. George, I'll come back to you with the remaining question 2. And now asking the question, you know, when we talk of politicians failing, we realize their lack they are failing, when we talk about underdevelopment, because they come with promises, and at the end, people don't have these promises they came for, and that is why they consider that they failed. So we're asking the question, is politicking really for the good of the masses? Is it just because I wanted to become an MP, a mayor, I wanted to become a president, and once elected, I disappear from the masses? Or what is happening? Is it actually for the good of the people? You said, yes, it should, but that's not what is on the ground.
Well, Mr. Venatius, this archaic culture of saying that politics is a dirty game, it's a very, very bad beginning, because it gives the impression that politics is not a good game, And if we begin from that starting point, that politics is a dirty game, then all what you mentioned, people giving promises and not keeping them, flows. So I believe that we have to eradicate, we have to uproot this mentality that politics is a dirty game. That's the first thing we have to do, because unless we do that, those who keep on cheating and promising things which they know they won't keep will definitely keep on doing that, unless we make it clear that politics is not a dirty game. It's a dignified vocation. In fact, it's a dignified vocation in which each Christian is called to conform to the values, to conform to the values and being guided by the Christian conscience for the common good of everybody. So I totally disagree all those politicians who think that politics is a dirty game and use it as an opportunity to cheat and do things that are totally incoherent to our faith and gospel values.
Thank you, George. But further, we must maintain that there are political, or electoral code, political systems that are not at times favorable for these people to practice their profession, call it, in a normal way. Like you said, some of them get involved into secret society, get involved into very ungodly acts. What should we then do in order to get rid of such kind of issues that lead them to find themselves soiling their hands, like we say?
Yes, politics is for the interest of the masses. And it is because of the refusal of some Christians to get involved in partisan politics that has led to unbelievers to occupy those posts of influence, and will go on now to make laws which are not good for the people. Christianity and its message is for the good of humanity. And you can agree with me that today's democracy gets its inspiration from Christian principles and morals. So when the Christians, a lot of Christians shy away from politics because they think it is dirty. Now, when you shy away from politics as a Christian, what happens? The unbeliever, those who are evil, they obviously will ascend the post of responsibility and administration. And what will happen? They will enact laws which are according to their own mindset and opinion. For example, I saw a pastor becoming or forming a party, and there were Christians condemning him. I've seen Christians involved in political parties, and other Christians are condemning them. I see priests preaching about politics, and others are condemning them. So for us to be able to change the narrative, we Christians, we have the moral obligation to participate in government. So to solve this problem, where laws are enacted, not for the good of the masses, where people come and make promises and not fulfill them, we should be able to push forward those who are true Christians. Christians should flood the political parties. Christians should vote candidates who will maintain the Christian principles. Christians should pray for political leaders. Christians should become parliamentarians. Imagine that if all the parliamentary seats are occupied by Christians in the country, what will happen? They are going to enact laws that are going to be for the good of the masses. If Christians become parliamentarians, they will no longer make promises and not fulfill them. When Christians become politicians and presidents, they are going to carry out developmental acts. There shall be less corruption. There shall be less bribery. You see, they will use their high offices in order to influence and change policies, principles. So it is very important. The lack of inactivity by Christians, thinking that they are being holy by not participating in politics, is doing a lot of harm. You see, when you refuse to become involved in partisan politics, when the Muslim go there, he's going to enact his Sharia law on you. And whether you like it or not, it's going to affect you. You see, but if it's a Christian, he's going to enact a law of equality, a law of for the common good. He's going to enact laws banning abortion, banning contraceptives, banning many things like Trump was trying to do. But when you allow unbelievers to take charge of those things, well, they will enact what they think is good for them. They will support abortion. They will support contraceptives, euthanasia, and Sharia law, racism, and all whatnot. So they will go in for what pleases them. But the Christian principle is that for the common good. And therefore, Christians should be involved massively in partisan politics. They should always vote for the right candidates. They should always pray for those in authority. They themselves should occupy positions of influence. They should occupy administrative posts, and they will bring a lot of change in the state, in the nation. They shall give a different orientation to politics.
Thank you so much, Father. Thank you. I think your message is going across to the many Christians who are watching us tonight. George, we are rounding up for time constraints. If we are to give, you are to talk to Cameroonians. You are Cameroonians, and you know what politics is doing back home. To Cameroonians who are listening to us, perhaps Christians who are listening to us, in less than 10 seconds, what would you tell them in relation to, registering in electoral registers, voting, participating in politics? What would you tell them in less than 10 minutes, George?
Father has spoken extensively on the need for Christians to be in politics, but I would like to add, this word before Christians. They should be genuine and authentic Christians. That's what we lack in Cameroon. We have all of them. We have many Christians in politics. There are many of them there in the government. But are they genuine? Are they authentic? That's the point. That's the point. That's what makes the difference. We have so many Christians, but are they genuine and authentic? Are they guided by the Christian conscience and by the gospel? Are they separating politics from their faith? That's where the problem is. So from your question, I would like to encourage every Cameroonian to be a genuine Christian. That's what we need, genuine Christian. That is, our lives should conform, we should emulate our founder, Jesus Christ. If we do that, all this corruption you're talking about on elections is going to stop. It's going to stop because we have ministers in Cameroon who are all Christians. They all went to the seminary, they're ex-seminarians. But look at what they are doing in politics. It's just opposite.
All right, George. Thank you. We are sorry we will have to interrupt because time is no longer on our side. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being there for today's edition of the programs. We are looking forward to having you in subsequent editions of Viewpoint when you give us the opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of today's edition of Viewpoint. It was a pleasure having you, and we expect to have you again in the next edition that comes up tomorrow. Up next is the news in the English language with Cynthia Nguemo. Until we meet again, goodbye and good night. Coronavirus is not an imagination or an invention. It is a real threat that spares no one. We are already counting so many casualties the world over. The situation is serious
and we individually have the choice to scrupulously respect prescribed norms to preserve lives or die by mortgaging the lives of others. Therefore, our responsibility is strongly solicited in rigor and discipline. To stay safe, we need to